Have you ever stopped to think about how God governs the world? It's not a simple question because most of the time, we see life as a game of rewards and punishments. We do good and expect everything to go right. We make a mistake and immediately fear the consequences. But the book of Job shatters this mindset, and you feel the impact when you realize the world doesn't work the way you imagine. Job was a man of integrity, righteous, and deeply devoted to God. His life was prosperous, his family united, and his faith unshakable. But suddenly everything collapsed. He lost his wealth, his children, his health, and a desperate question echoed in his heart. If God is just, why am I suffering? This is the same question you've probably asked in silence when the pain seemed too great for logic to explain. What strikes you most about this story is that Job's friends try to give him easy answers. They insist that his suffering must be punishment, that it only happened because he secretly did something wrong. Maybe you've heard something similar before. If things went wrong, it's because you didn't have enough faith. But the wisdom found in the book of Job shows that these answers can't bear the weight of real life. In the middle of the chaos, Job raises his voice and questions God. He isn't afraid to speak openly, to reveal his deepest wounds. You can feel the raw power of this cry because you've been there, in that place where nothing makes sense, but you keep talking to the Creator anyway. It's in this honest dialogue that the mystery begins to unfold. When God finally answers Job, he doesn't give direct explanations about his suffering. He doesn't say, "This happened because of that." Instead, God invites Job to look at the universe, the skies, the seas, the wild animals, the vastness of creation. What he's showing is that the world is far greater than human logic can grasp. In that moment, you realize it's not just about pain or immediate justice, but about something much bigger. The wisdom of Job teaches us that life can't be reduced to simple equations. Suffering is not always a sign of sin, just as prosperity is not proof of righteousness. This deeply challenges you because it breaks the illusion of control. You come to understand that to truly live is to trust God, even when you don't understand the paths He chooses. And this is the key: trust. Job doesn't get all the answers, but he receives something far more powerful: the awareness of God's presence in the midst of the chaos. And that changes everything. You've probably experienced this strange peace before, the kind that doesn't come from explanations but from the certainty that you are not alone. This is the central message of the book, a faith that remains alive even when everything around you is falling apart. The book of Job is like a mirror for your own life. It shows that the deepest questions don't have easy answers, but they open the door to something far greater: a living relationship with the Creator. You begin to see that you don't need to have everything under control because the world is already in God's hands. When you look closely at Job's story, you realize that God doesn't govern the world like a human judge applying automatic rules. He rules as the Lord of the universe, sustaining forces you can't even begin to imagine. The wind that blows, the changing seasons, the rising sun, all of it is under His care. This realization fills you with reverence, but also with deep rest, and this is where the emotion overflows. Deep down, what you long for most isn't an explanation, it's presence. The book reveals that true wisdom isn't about solving every mystery, but about learning to trust the God who rules the world with infinite wisdom. That kind of trust sets you free from the crushing anxiety of having to understand everything. Picture the final scene. Job, once desperate, now silent in humility before the greatness of God. He isn't silent because of blind resignation, but because he has seen something greater, a God who remains on His throne even when everything seems to be falling apart. That is the same answer offered to you, not a formula, but an encounter. As you finish this reflection, you realize that the book of Job is not just about suffering, it's about radical trust. It's about letting go of the reins and resting in the God who rules heaven and earth. This wisdom is revolutionary because it invites you to live with faith in a world that constantly feels chaotic. And now the question turns to you. What rules your heart? The need for explanations or trust in the God who governs all things? This is the choice that Job's story places before you. It's not an easy path, but it's a transformative one. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write in the comments which part of Job's story spoke to you the most. Because here, together, we learn to face life not with ready-made answers, but with the wisdom that comes from God's presence.